I did the one. I'm upset with myself.
You messed it up.
I did.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Mafia Podcast, NBA Edition. We are in the middle of our NBA mini-series where we are breaking down each and every team's 2019-2020 season and then previewing their upcoming off-season. Today's topic of conversation will be the Orlando Magic, so we are officially into the playoff teams here. My name is Jordan Jaika, aka Dr. Fantasy, and I'm here with my co-host, the Fantasy Caveman. So I'll dive right into the 2019-2020 season recap for the Orlando Magic. They went 33-40 under head coach Steve Clifford. They were the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, lost to the Milwaukee Bucks 4-1 in the first round. They didn't look too bad. I mean, they won that first game there. I know gave some people some false optimism, but they're a very tough defensive team, which will keep them in a lot of games that they play. But going through their season leaders here, their points leader at 19.6 points was Nikola Vucevic. Second, we have Evan Fournier at 18.5. Terrence Ross at 14.7. Aaron Gordon at 14.4. Markelle Fultz at 12.1, and then Jonathan Isaac at 11.9. DJ Augustine also averaged above 10 points, so they had quite a few contributors, very well-rounded there. Rebound leader was also Nikola Vucevic at 10.9. Aaron Gordon was 7.7 rebounds. Jonathan Isaac with 6.8 rebounds. Then got to throw Mo Bamba in there with 4.9 rebounds. I got to say his name a few times. Why not? Assist leader, Markelle Fultz at 5.1. DJ Augustine second with 4.6. Their steal leader was also Jonathan Isaac with 1.6 points. Markelle Fultz averaged 1.3. And then they actually had three tied at 1.1. Definitely the most players over one steal that we've had since we started the series. Yeah. Then second in first in blocks was also Jonathan Isaac, 2.3 blocks a game, pretty impressive from a wing player. Mo Bamba in his limited time was second on the team in blocks, so 1.4 blocks, pretty impressive. Mo Bamba, we want Mo Bamba.
I had zero intention of mentioning his name once in this pod.
Well, that's lame, so go ahead. Who impressed you then? Obviously, it wasn't Mo Bamba.
No, definitely not Mo Bamba. A couple guys, they were among their season leaders, but I think you gotta, it should have already happened for him, but I think Markelle Fultz, you gotta look at what Markelle Fultz is able to do. This is a guy that he was drafted number 1 overall, and he is to put it mildly, he was a bust. Let's just call it what it is. But I think finally, he found the right situation, kind of away from any real spotlight, where he could just focus on himself and focus on the game. So I think he showed a lot of flashes. Like I said, 12 points, 5 assists, and a steal. I think the bottom line is he kind of showed a lot of those abilities that made him a number 1 pick. I mean, I think he was a solid playmaker for him. He played some real pesky defense, just one of those pesky defenders, kind of like a lesser version of Marcus Smart. And he showed some decent athleticism for a guy his size. What do you make of Fultz this season? Are you kind of impressed that he's starting to put it together?
Yeah, and I think it's a little funny that people call him a bust, because I was just looking, I was like, how old is he? He's only 21 years old, so he still has a lot of time to improve, so this is definitely a step in the right direction. I think the biggest concern with him was his shooting percentage, really across the board, and he really improved that this year. He's 46% overall, 46.5 actually from the field. His free throw percentage, which was very publicly criticized, went up to 73%, so actually a very reasonable percentage there. 3-point shot is still something he probably needs to work on long term. I mean, I look at him more of like I'm trying to think, like a Rondo early in his career. Rondo was not a good 3-point shooter. He's improved as he's aged here, but I think he's kind of, and you mentioned his pesky defense, so if I had to give him a comparison right now, it's kind of like a younger Rondo. So if he can improve that three-point shot throughout the course of his career, I think he'll just be fine. And we have to remember he's 21. He is in a good situation now. Steve Clifford's an underrated head coach. He knows how to coach gritty teams. And Orlando's not really the mecca for NBA basketball, so he can focus on his thing.
Yeah, it's kind of been nice to see him finally live up to some the hype. Jonathan Isaac, you mentioned, who, man, I mean, I'm sure this is a guy you were definitely gonna mention because I know you love your defense. So, but I'm gonna steal him from you here and talk about him for a minute. I mean, you talked about 1.6 steals and 2.3 blocks in his. I mean, granted, he was kind of hurt and didn't really play, the full amount of games. It was kind of upsetting that he got hurt in the restart. So that's kind of a bummer. But like I said, with the plus minus, quickly, DJ Augustine led the team, and among guys that played normal, like a solid amount of games, DJ Augustine led the team at plus 1.3. So just a little tidbit for you. But Jonathan Isaac had a defensive box plus minus of plus 2.9. So that's pretty impressive for when you don't really see those kind of numbers out of a wing. I mean, you're talking about 1.6 steals, you're typically talking like a guard, and the blocks are typically a bigger man. The wings typically don't have those kind of defensive numbers, but he's easily the Magic's best defender. So if he's able to stay healthy going forward, that just helps the Magic do what they do on the defensive end.
Yeah, and the Magic were one of the best teams defensively in the entire league. In the Eastern Conference, I believe they allowed the fourth fewest points, which is pretty impressive because there's some strong defensive teams in the East when you think about the Raptors, Celtics, the Heat. Even the 76ers were pretty strong last season. So they were one of the top teams defensively, and a big reason for that was Jonathan Isaac. When he was on the court, he only played, I believe, 34 games it was. So I'm interested to see how he develops offensively, though, because I think defensively, no matter what, you're talking about Jonathan Isaac as he has the upside to win Defensive Player of the Year just as a one-on-one defender. He reminds me a lot, if you think of the old Spurs days, Bruce Bowen. I know a lot of people remember Bruce Bowen. He was a fantastic defender. His offensive game never developed. So that's what I'm kind of curious of Jonathan Isaac. Is he going to be a role player? He's only 22, so he still has time to work on that offensive game. But I think at the worst, you have a Bruce Bowen kind of player who's just a lockdown defender and one of the best on-ball defenders in the NBA. But if his offensive game can improve, I mean, I don't want to say he's Kawhi-like because he doesn't have that offensive game, but he could be a lesser version of that realistically, a lockdown defender with a solid offensive game. So I'll be interested to see how he develops. I think it was a nice step in the right direction for him. He was one of the most disappointing injuries for me personally because I wanted to see what he could do for a full season, and we haven't really gotten to see that yet. He's missed time every single year he's been in the NBA, and I hope that's not a theme for him, but realistically, he's really exciting, and that's a lot of people. He's one of those names that when you say exciting, most people are probably like, "Who the heck is Jonathan Isaac?" But I mean, he was defensively, he's very exciting, and offensively, he did average 12 points a game, so it's not like he didn't score at all. So there's some work to be done there. Any other players that impressed you? Or you want to move on?
We can move on here.
Okay, I'm surprised there wasn't a name you said, even though he barely.
I was going to, but
I'm about to say his name on the depth chart.
I mean, he was gonna be mentioned in the free agent, so
yeah. No matter what, the name's coming up. You guys can see what that name is.
I mean, he was Carter Williams wasn't really. I mean, he was solid. He kind of filled his role nicely, but he didn't do anything overly impressive. He just kind of did his thing solidly.
Yep. No, that's definitely true. So I'll go through the roster recap and their upcoming free agents here. Right now, and a lot of these names we've mentioned already at point guard, you have Markel Fultz, a nice veteran, and DJ Augustine behind him. I would say he's one of the top bench point guards in the entire league. He's kind of filled that role for many years for teams now. Now that he's 32, but he's done it really well, so he definitely has value. And you mentioned it; he was their plus minus leader, so he's proven that he does have value. Michael Carter Williams is also listed as their third point guard. At the 2, you have Evan Fournier, who's always been a solid three-point shooter. Michael Carter Williams, Terrence Ross. Terrence Ross, another solid offensive force off the bench. That's kind of one of the themes that I'll say going through this is a very deep team. I don't know how many superstars they have, but it's a very deep, gritty, they go 10 deep, which is not something a lot of teams can say. Then at the 3, you have Jonathan Isaac, who wasn't playing at the end of the season, James Ennis, Terrence Ross once again. At the 4, you have Aaron Gordon, who's been, I would say, a little disappointing for me personally.
Yeah.
I think he showed flashes that he could be an all-star caliber plaplayer.
I mean, he's a pretty good dunker.
I mean, that's all that counts at the end of the day, right? We don't care if he can actually play basketball.
As long as you can dunk.
But I know me personally, I was one of those people. I thought he could be a lot more. He hasn't quite shown it yet. He's still 24, so he still has some time, but I think he's been a little disappointing. Mm-hmm. Another great veteran defensive presence on the bench, Al-Farouq Aminu, who is kind of bounced around here, but he's got another 2 years with them, so he signed a 3-year deal total. So he'll be there for the next few years. Then at center, Nikola Vucevic, who I think is one of the most underrated big men in the game. When we talk about the best centers in the league, I don't think he ever really comes up, but realistically, he's probably a top 5 center in the league.
He started popping some threes this year too.
He did. That's always scary when that happens.
He's not a superstar, but he's their closest thing to a superstar.
Yeah, right? I mean, he's an all-star caliber player.
But he's somewhere between all-star and superstar. I mean, he can get there, but he's just not there yet.
Oh, I wouldn't, and I would say realistically at this point in his career, you probably won't see him get there. But there's nothing wrong with having a center like that. And then behind him, I'll say Mo Bamba again. Mo Bamba's there too. He's their backup center. So I'll go through the upcoming free agents, and then I'll let you make your comments just to get them out there. They don't have a ton of free agents, but they do have a few interesting ones. DJ Augustine is probably the number one most interesting one for me, and Michael Carter Williams is also a free agent. So to me, I don't think they're going to retain both of these guys. I'll mention they don't have a ton of salary cap. I was surprised to see that they have the 8th highest salary cap. So they don't have that much space. So realistically, if they sign DJ Augustine, they're not going to have room for really any sort of big time free agent, which is kind of surprising when you really look at this roster. It's solid, but I think it needs more punch. So, but I don't expect them to retain both of those guys. If I'm them, I'm retaining DJ Augustine just because he's the more sure thing at this point. You can probably sign him to mid-level exception right around, kind of maybe similar to what Al-Farouq Aminu got right around. He is making $9 million a year, so maybe right around that level. Other smaller names, I always got to mention all of them for Caveman, or he yells at me. You have Wes Iwundu, Gary Clark, Vic Law, and B.J. Johnson, who B.J. Johnson and Vic Law were on two-way contracts, and the other guys, Iwundu and Clark, were on smaller minimum salary deals.
Yeah, did Cameron Fournier didn't sign a long-term deal, right? But I have him down as a player option for 17.
Oh, he has a player option for $17 million.
Obviously that's the big thing. I was waiting for you to mention it, but obviously that's gonna play a big part in what they do because Evan Fournier. I mean, the Magic aren't really known for their offense, and that's putting it very kindly. But when you talk about Evan Fournier, if they have any sort of offensive scoring, he's the main guy. So I think what he decides to do, I mean, do you think if Evan Fournier hit the open market that he finds a longer term deal above 17? think he's a 20 mil a year guy,
In
or
today's NBA, yeah, he definitely is with his 3-point shooting ability as well. I mean, he's not one of the best, but he's a very, very good 3-point shooter. So in today's market, he'll probably get like a 4-year, $80 million deal, which is kind of interesting because when you really think about it, if the Magic signed him to a 4-year, and I think that they're probably going to try to sign him long term unless they're really confident that they can pick somebody else up or they can draft somebody with the 15th overall pick. But realistically, they're probably going to try to sign him. So if they give him a few million more a year and sign DJ Augustine, their cap space is pretty much gone at that point.
see
So
if they, I mean, it depends. What do the Magic think they are at this point? Because you can let, I mean, assuming it all depends. Or Evan Fournier can pick up his option at 17, which I honestly don't expect him to pick up that option. He's worth more than that in today's NBA. But if he turns down his option and then the Nuggets don't try to re-sign him, then you're talking about a situation where they have a little bit of space now. If Fournier turns down his player option, so we'll see. I think they should retain Carter Williams. I think he's very good for him. Markelle Fultz and Carter Williams combo at point guard is definitely the way to go for the future.
oh my gosh, no, that's a terrible idea.
Well, I think Michael Carter. I think it's not like Carter Williams is going to command a lot of money. He kind of did his thing where I think he did enough to earn a contract somewhere next year, wherever it is. It might not be more than like the minimum, but he definitely did enough to earn himself at least probably like a backup third point guard role on some team. Who knows? But nothing really. I mean, pretty much all their guys, other than Fournier, Augustine, pretty much not really much that's gonna move them either way. I think, especially because you look at all these guys, and none of them are talented enough to change the meter either way. So,
Yeah.
except for probably Fournier, but that's gonna be interesting because I have a feeling that I don't think Fournier is gonna be around next season for him.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what he can command on the market realistically. I don't, I've read a few things, and that's why I guess he's one of those names that kind of slipped my mind. Is a lot of people think this is more of like a role player off of the bench based on scouting reports that I've read. So I don't know what kind of deal he's going to get because on the Magic, who don't have a lot of offensive punch, he's one of their top scoring options. But if you put him on a contending team, I mean, what's he, a sixth option maybe? And I mean, he's a solid 3-point shooter, but I think it'll be interesting. I think that there will be a team who isn't competing that will way overpay him. You always see shooters like this way get overpaid with guys or with teams that have a lot of space.
Then you go to a new team and suck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's what happens a lot.
He's gonna get like the Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
Will pay him $20 million or something.
So yeah, I mean, if I'm him, he's 27 too, so he's probably looking for that last long-term deal here. Yeah. I'm assuming. So
if I was him, I would definitely. I think he's gonna command over 17 million on a longer-term deal. So if I were him, but then if he declines, then that puts the Magic in a decent situation where they can go out and try to find somebody else. Because all of a sudden they go from like not having any space to all of a sudden they have some space now.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and I like the point that you made. What are the Magic doing right now? I mean, when you look at this roster, to me, it's more of like an average playoff team. An 8 seed is perfect, and then they can keep getting knocked out every year. But their salary cap says that should be competing right now. So it's kind of an interesting situation because a lot of them are longer-term deals. Aaron Gordon, Vucevic, these guys are all here for 2 to 3 more seasons. Even Terrence Ross is signed for $12.5 million for the next few seasons. but it fluctuates. It's 11.5 to 13.5, but still, I mean, he's getting paid for the next few years. So when you look at it, I mean, this is a team that looks like they need to make some moves, but they don't have the flexibility to. If you're also looking at Jonathan Isaac, if they want to sign him long term, this is his last year on his deal. So you probably need to leave a little space. So even if Fournier leaves, I don't see them going out and signing a big name because, I mean, what is Jonathan Isaac going to command? I mean, 25 million a season.
I think it's good. That's going to largely depend on how healthy he is next year.
True. Also very true.
He comes out and has another injury-riddled season like he did last year.
No,
that you're talking. Which, honestly, to be honest, that would probably be a better situation for the Magic if you think about it.
Yeah.
Not that you want anybody to get hurt at all, but in terms of salary-wise,
I think they'd rather have their young piece perform. I mean, I'll pay the guy if he's worthy of it. So it's interesting. I mean, they have an interesting. To them, it's a financial issue in my opinion right now, and the matter of how they work this cap space. I don't. There's a lot of moving pieces here. If Fournier leaves, they can maybe go after a bigger name this offseason, but I don't know. We'll see. I expect them to need to leave some space for Isaac too. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. If they do sign a big name, to me, maybe it says that they're not going to sign Jonathan Isaac long term and they're going to move on from him, which is.
I've also heard a couple of rumblings about possibly moving those larger contracts that you talked about with Aaron. Talk about Aaron Gordon and Vucevic. You can't. If you're them, why the hell would you move Vucevic?
That means you're in full rebuild mode.
I mean, I can understand kind of trying to move Aaron Gordon or moving Terrence Ross, but Vucevic, you got to keep that guy. He's your only star right now. So, yeah.
Man, I guess I didn't read Did you see? This was about a week ago. I guess it went under the radar. Did you see the news on Jonathan Isaac?
I did not. No.
They expect him to miss the entire next season.
Oh, really?
They came out a week ago saying his knee injury was more serious than first thought, and they're expecting him to most likely miss the entire season next year. So that's kind of disappointing.
He's going to come back Kevin Durant style.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, then they don't need to save any space for him. He's going to have to take a small rookie scale kind of deal, similar to what he's on right now. So
now that changes things. Now Fournier declines his option. They have all that space. Go out and get. Who nobody wants to come play for the Magic.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's. The only name that I keep saying Fred VanVleet because I really like Fred VanVleet, but he's not gonna leave the Raptors to go to the Magic.
If he left the Raptors to come to the Magic, it's simply, I mean, and there's guys that do that, still do that these days. He's just chasing the money at that point.
Yep, that's for sure.
I mean,
all right,
we talk way too much about that.
Yeah, I was like, let's move on to the off-season needs, and we kind of alluded to it. Targets and needs. I'll start it off here. I mentioned before, I think the biggest need here is just adding more of a scoring punch because defensively they're fine. I mean, they're one of the best teams defensively. So and it's tough with a 15th overall pick. They'll have a lot of options to have some high upside defensive players like Sadiq Bey or Josh Green, but I don't think that's the route that they should go. For me, especially if they lose Evan Fournier, I think this is the perfect landing spot for Cole Anthony because I think he could play off the ball next to Markelle Fultz. And I think Cole Anthony has a lot of offensive upside. So I think a backcourt of Cole Anthony and Markelle Fultz is really intriguing. Cole Anthony has more of an ability because he does have a three-point shot to play off the ball compared to Markelle Fultz. I have read some reports that say a lot of NBA teams aren't scouting Cole Anthony as a point guard, and they more want him to play off the ball because he does make some poor decisions, and he's more of he has a solid shot, and he can be a playmaker off the ball better than he is with the ball in his hands. So I think that would be a really fun fit. I don't know if he's going to make it all the way to 15th. I think somebody ahead of them is probably going to take the chance. But if he falls, I think it's a really nice landing spot. Other names with some offensive upside, because I think that's the key here. They don't need another defender. Just target guys with some offensive upside. RJ Hampton shown some ability and was highly recruited before he went overseas. Kira Lewis, who we did an episode about, I think has some offensive upside, and he's a solid defender. But I always say Aaron Neesmith. Anybody that needs offense needs to at least consider. And I think Aaron Neesmith is actually kind of the perfect Evan Fournier replacement because I think
he's one of the guys I had down.
Then I won't steal any more of your thunder. I don't have any free agents down, so go ahead.
Interesting that you mentioned Kira Lewis. The latest mock has Orlando taking Kira Lewis at 15. And then your boy they have your boy Cole Anthony going 18th to Dallas, but
that's a fall.
We'll say that for another day. But as far as their offseason needs go, you kind of hit on it. 3-point shooting specifically. I mean, they're solid defensively, but you talk about the Magic, like who aside from Evan Fournier could you rely on to make 3-point shots? So think about it. Like
nobody. Terrence Ross maybe is their second best 3-point shooter.
If Terrence Ross is your second best 3-point shooter, you have issues. And aside from that, you look at a lot of their free agents are on the wing. They have a lot of wing, they need to decide, because if they lose most of these guys that they have on the wing, they're going to need to kind of look to maybe add some wing depth in the draft or free agency. You mentioned Neesmith, similar guy to Fournier. They're just basically replacing him. Probably Aaron Neesmith has potential to be better than Fournier, in my opinion. And then you talked about Devin Vassell, another guy. Shot 42% from 3 last season in college. And then if you're looking at free, like you said, it's going to all depend on that situation that happens with Fournier. If they don't re-sign Fournier, they can go after some bigger names. But assuming, if Fournier opts in, you're looking at a guy like possibly like Wesley Matthews. I think you're talking.
I had him. Yeah.
Solid season for the. They could swing bigger if Fournier doesn't re-sign, but I think the Magic are going to at least try to re-sign him to a longer-term deal. Fournier. So if they do, then you're looking at a guy like Wesley Matthews. Shot 38% from 3 last year. I actually think the Bucks are going to try to re-sign Wesley Matthews, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, they're kind of in a situation, where they're not. Even if Fournier opts out and they're able to sign a big guy, it's not going to do anything. That's the state of they don't have the talent around the team to really compete. So.
Yep, I would agree with that. I think that's all good stuff. So let's move on to where we see them finishing in the future. I think that's a pretty interesting conversation, honestly.
Yeah.
Really start looking at the Eastern Conference. We've talked about this before. I feel like there's several young teams with upside. Even when you look at the Cavaliers, who I think are better than what they played last season. The Bulls, when the Wizards are fully healthy with John Wall and Bradley Beal, I think they're all contenders to move ahead of the Magic. But the reality is when you play defense that's that solid, you're going to be in the mix for that 8 seed. So unless they go out and sign a big name, I think at this point that's where they're at. They're going to be around the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. Maybe a few games out of it as the 9th or 10th seed, but I really, based on their roster, can't see them finishing any higher until they go out and get more offensive firepower. And I think that's what you saw against the Bucks in the playoffs, is they actually didn't allow the Bucks offensively to dominate them. They held them in check, but the Magic just couldn't score.
That's not saying a lot. Look what happened versus look at how the Bucks looked versus. It wasn't that hard for the Magic to shut them down, slow them down, to be honest with you.
Well, the Heat and the Magic are two of the best defensive teams. Yeah. So I don't know, is it the Bucks struggled or both these teams are that strong defensively? I don't know. That's a debate for another time. But where do you see them finishing?
Yeah, like I said, they just don't have even. See, if they don't re-sign Fournier, they replace him with somebody else, his caliber, maybe a tad better. They're still in the same situation.
Yep.
They play, like you said, they play good enough defense to be in the mix for the 8th spot. I don't know if that's really that much of a compliment, if you really think about it. Like, hey, you're good enough. You're good enough to be the 8th seed. If you, that's if they continue their like, if their defensive play slips at all for some reason, then now you're talking a team that's probably looking at being 11th or 12th. Like their offense, if they can't they have trouble scoring. They just don't have the scoring to. So if their defense holds up, I can definitely see them finishing 8th. Although I think with all the other teams on the come up next year, like you said, like with the Wizards, like with the Cavs, uh, I could honestly see them finishing second to last in the conference if possibly, because you look at all the other teams that are they'll be better than the Knicks.
Okay. I'd still put them ahead of the Pistons.
I mean, you think the Pistons are better offensively than the Magic?
Yeah, I guess. The Pistons don't have many names offensively either, but no.
Hey.
The answer is, let's talk, Jonathan Isaac being out the whole season, that has a big impact on their defense too, so.
You think they'll finish better than the Pistons next year?
It depends. I think it could be close.
Let's say they keep Fournier for the argument purposes.
Yeah, I'd say they finish ahead of them.
Better than the Pistons?
Yep, I would say yep.
Well, we'll have to see about that. I don't know about that.
Well, yeah. All right. Any other final notes you want to make then?
No, they're just, we talked way too long about that.
Yeah, the middle part it was all good stuff though. I never mind having a nice lively debate about the Orlando Magic. I think that's what the people are looking for, a nice lively debate on the Orlando Magic. Hey, we were talking the other day, our most watched episode on YouTube is the Washington Wizards preview, so I'm not sure what that says about us or the Wizards, but go check out that episode if you're listening. So apparently that's our most popular episode. So I don't really have any other notes on the Magic. I think we have a really fun episode coming up with the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about with the Nets, obviously. One of the brightest outlooks that we'll have for one of these lower seeded teams. But we're looking forward to the rest of this. We'll have a ton of these episodes coming out as more and more teams keep getting eliminated. We're going to have to start playing catch up here and really recording a lot of episodes. So there'll be lots of content coming out in the next few weeks for the NBA. And then we roll right into free agency and the draft. So we're going to be talking about some more NBA prospects. So lots of stuff coming out the next few weeks. Make sure you check all that out on the Fantasy Mafia. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. All of our videos will go up on there. And subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it be Spotify, Google or Apple Podcasts, Anchor. We're everywhere right now. So make sure you subscribe. You'll get a notification anytime something comes out. So I think, and I always have to mention the Fantasy Hotspot. Don't let me forget it. Keep the conversation going there. It's been very busy in the Hotspot recently. Tons of posts going up every hour. It seems like every time I check my phone, there's 5 more notifications for a post. So lots of good stuff going up. Love it. Keep the conversation going, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yep. Okay.